Good afternoon and welcome to Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think that De Bruyne is the organ that's inside of your skull.
That's terrible, mate. What are you doing?
You know what?
Well, it was very cerebral, shall we say. And we're having a very special Christmas edition, I guess you could say, of Across the Pitch. And it's a very special edition because we have a new addition to the team.
Yes, we have a special guest, and you may have already read his blog on our site. Everybody give a warm introduction to Matt Robards, who's going to be our new tactical expert. He's going to continue writing for the site and appear on the show. And today he's here to talk about the transfer window with us. But first, we're going to have him tell us a little bit about himself. You played some soccer, didn't you, Matt?
Yeah, I did. First, let me just say thank you for allowing me to join and for coming alongside with you guys as you kind of create some great content for us Premier League fans over on this side of the pond. So yeah, I did play most of my life. I remember being 4 or 5. My dad called me up into his room and asked me if I wanted to play soccer or baseball. And I knew from an early age that I hated baseball. And so I wanted to play soccer, and it just took off from there. And I was lucky enough to really play up through college here locally at Arizona Christian University. And then my time came to an end. And so now I enjoy coaching my oldest son as he begins to grow his love for the game.
Fantastic. Love it.
What position did you play?
I played all over. I preferred right back and then central midfield, kind of that conductor role that we see Jorginho playing for Chelsea. I liked being able to see the field and move the ball around quickly. I did play a lot of right back in college because that's what we needed at the time.
He is really an underrated guy from Chelsea, and he's kind of Sarri's guy that kind of runs his offense, and he likes to have him wherever he goes, I've noticed.
Oh, for sure. He is the quarterback of that team. Sarri really made it clear, I think, when he was going to come that Jorginho was the guy he wanted to go. And luckily, we were able to sign him before City got a hold of him.
It seems like City's going after everybody these days.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when you're ran by a country. You're linked with all the big
players. Chelsea, come on now. They don't call them Chelsea for nothing. I should mention that Matt, and just for balance sake, I think we've probably got Matt on here. Matt is a Chelsea fan, and aside from that, he's a good bloke. How did you get into English football? Say over, I don't know, any of the other leagues?
Yeah, I grew up in Texas, and so playing club soccer out there, our coach owned a soccer store, but he was from Italy, and so every time you went in there, he had Milan games on and Juventus games on, and so I really kind of got familiar with the Italian league first.
Okay.
And I didn't get into the MLS. I wasn't, I didn't have a team there that I really liked. It was still small. And I watched a lot of U.S. men's soccer because that was just really what was more readily available. Anytime the U.S. was playing a friendly or a major qualifying game or a World Cup game, you could find it on TV. And so it was the 2006 World Cup. I was just watching all the games like normal. And I was watching an England game, and Frank Lampard caught my attention. He plays that box midfielder role. Mm-hmm. A role I've played in the past. And so just watching him throughout that tournament, and then on top of seeing John Terry as well in the defense there, really just kind of sparked something in me. And I enjoyed watching him. And so I wanted to see more of him as the World Cup ended. And so, he played for a team called Chelsea. And so that was the team I started watching. And this is right at that moment where in 2006, we really saw a shift here in America, where the Premier League signed a major TV deal, and you would start getting those games, as opposed to before when you would only see maybe the Man United derbies or the Liverpool game. We were able to watch more, and so I just began watching Chelsea, and they became my team, man.
Very good. I know Phil has a lot to say about that 2006 World Cup, because that was about the time you started watching too, Phil, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you got into England that year, and France was actually the team that I got into. And I was really Zidane and Henri that caught my attention. And of course, Zidane retired, so that was why I followed Henri to Arsenal. Same thing, I enjoyed watching him play, wanted to see more of that guy. And I really think that comes back to like what you were saying yesterday is where are these jersey sales coming from American fans and things like that is I think that a lot of it is that so many of us as Americans, it was all about the US national team. And maybe around 2006 was the first time that we started seeing the other teams. And then once the USMNT obviously makes whenever their exit, I think everybody kind of jumped onto another team and then, maybe started following those guys around the world. That really comes back to what I used to always ask you is during the World Cup, I could see Messi, Ronaldo, Wayne Rooney, all those guys, why aren't all those guys in one league? And that was where this show actually kind of
That's exactly
birthed from was that discussion of okay, well then if it doesn't work that way, then how does it work?
right. Exactly. Yeah, you obviously, in your US mentality, missed the fantastic run that Australia made in 2006, only to be cheated out of it by those diving Italians. And I'm cheesed off. I still am. So 12 years later, it still makes my blood boil.
For us, we want to forget the '06 World Cup.
Yeah?
2002 was our World Cup.
Yes.
That run was amazing. And then in 2006, we were last in our group. I think we only had a point from a draw. And we were I think we finished last. And so I want to forget the '06 World Cup.
I think your golden age so far, I'm sure there's more to come, was probably 2002, as you say, Matt. When I think it was at the quarterfinals or the semifinals you knocked out by Germany?
We got knocked out by Germany in the quarterfinals.
Quarterfinals, right.
Yeah, with Torsten Frings handballing the ball on the goal line and the ref not calling it. Yeah. We needed that VAR back then, man.
VAR, for those of you that don't know, is a video assistant referee. They don't have it in the English Premier League. So think about it like
they've approved it for next year, though.
They have. So, in any sport in America, they can go and review it in the box. In baseball, they'll take it back to New York and they'll video the decision back. They don't have that. So basically, the referee is on his own. It certainly makes for some talking points, but I think it's a good thing. But anyway, we digress.
All of this talk about the U.S. men's national team kind of leads into what our main discussion is today. And especially this is something that we want to talk to Matt about being a Chelsea fan, is as we all know that one of the guys who's kind of considered the future of the men's national team is, of course, Christian Pulisic, who's playing in Germany right now. But word has it that he could be headed towards Chelsea or possibly one of their rivals here in the upcoming transfer window. What have you heard about that, Matt?
Yeah, from reports coming out, it seems like Pulisic's made a deal, or there's a deal in place at least, whatever that means, right? There's always some sort of mystery there. But it sounds like he's heading to the Premier League, possibly in January. Some reports coming out saying it won't be till the summer. And the two possible landing spots are Chelsea and Liverpool. Coming from a Chelsea supporter and someone who supports the U.S. men's national team, both moves, I think, would be very bad for Pulisic to make.
Really? Why do you say that? Why do you say that, Matt?
Well, so Pulisic can't even get on the pitch at Dortmund right now. Yeah. And that is not to do with his form. I don't think he's necessarily playing poorly.
He's blocked.
He's blocked, man. And Jadon Sancho is just playing stellar football right now in Germany.
Now, Pulisic is getting some run in the Champions League, just not so much in Bundesliga.
Yeah, we'll see him making some league, some cup appearances, Champions League. He has made a couple substitute appearances in the Bundesliga, but for the most part, he is down on the pecking order. I think personally he should stay and fight for his spot. Jadon Sancho is in unbelievable form right now. I personally don't think it can continue. He's going to experience a dip. And then the other person you got ahead of him is Marco Reus, and we know his injury-prone past. And so I think there's a little bit of room there for Pulisic to stay and fight. I think moving to the Premier League would be tough on him. I don't think he has the physicality needed to deal with what he deal with in the Premier League as far as the central defenders and the fullback. If you look at a guy like Eden Hazard who gets kicked out of some games, I think we would see that a lot with Pulisic. And so I think each move would be a bad move. I don't think he would be making any Liverpool or Chelsea's starting lineup.
Absolutely not. I think he'd be a supporting player. I mean, if you look at a guy that's as talented as Loftus-Cheek, he's just starting to maybe make Chelsea's lineup as a sub, and I don't think that Pulisic would be ahead of a guy like Loftus-Cheek in the pecking order.
For sure. And I would even say he might not even make the bench at Chelsea for some of those games. I mean, you got a guy, so we have a guy, Callum Hudson-Odoi, who had a stellar preseason. The appearances he's made in the League Cup have been outstanding, and he still is not even making a Premier League bench. And so I think Pulisic would be fighting for that, and it would hinder his growth.
There probably is a case for someone like him to move to Chelsea and Liverpool. And I think the case is that in English football, you can loan players out to other teams, get game time, and they get a little bit of an introduction to the game. I mean, he's probably going to be playing in at least the Championship, or at best the Championship, I would say, if he's going to be loaned out. Probably not the best career move, but he will get some exposure over in England to the game, but also over here as well, because the Bundesliga isn't really, which is the German league, by the way, it isn't really covered that well here, is it?
No, and actually, well, we're starting to see more. So Fox carries their TV rights, and they do an outstanding job with coverage, and more people. I think there's a little bit of a discussion there, maybe why we as Americans gravitate more towards the English game, especially when it appears that the German league is much more willing to give American players a chance.
And you know what? Australian players, that matter as well. I just have to put that bit in there. I know you're not scouting Australian players. That's fine, Matt. I'm not going to play
I still remember Tim Cahill when he was for the Red Bulls.
Yes.
I think it took like 40 seconds against the Dynamo. He hit like a 50-yard little chested volley.
Oh, God, he was good at those. Oh, it's making my hair stand up on end. I love Timmy Cahill. God, he was good.
That's about the end of my Australian footballer knowledge right
that's
there.
That's about it. Sorry, everyone in Australia. I know I'm selling the game short over there. Apologies. So before we started recording today, we were having a little bit of a chat about what it's like being an American fan of the Premier League. And you know what? It's funny because I often wear my Arsenal shirts around town and I see other people wearing Arsenal shirts. But even if I see someone wearing a Liverpool shirt or a Chelsea shirt, you always get some sort of reaction out of them. There's a bit of a camaraderie there. And I have to tell you about this one the other day. I was wearing my Arsenal shirt. I was at the checkout at the Safeway, and I saw a guy walk into the store and he was wearing his Chelsea shirt. And I stared him down and shook my head as he was walking past. And do you know what his reaction was? He just held up his hand and he put 4 fingers up as if to say, "You're in 4th place, mate. What are you shaking your head at?" But for those that don't know, Arsenal has a bit of a reputation for coming in 4th.
Yes, they love that 4th place spot, and they haven't gotten it the last couple of years. So.
Back to what we were talking about the transfer window, and certainly you've mentioned that you don't like the idea of Pulisic coming to Chelsea. Another guy that we've heard rumored possibly coming to Chelsea is Callum Wilson. What have you heard about this, and what would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. He's young. You know, I think he's 26, 25, 26, right around there.
Yeah.
He's got the speed. You know, he's Bournemouth's top scorer right now. So that means automatically January transfer window, he's not going to come cheap. You're going to pay a premium for him because Bournemouth's not going to want to part with their leading scorer.
He just signed a 4-year contract with them at the beginning of the year too. So he comes with a lot of years.
And he's got the injury path. I think under Sarri, he could thrive in that system. He has the speed, he has the confidence, which are 2 very important things for playing under Sarri. I think he would operate similar to kind of more like a false 9 as opposed to a hold-up man, like we see Giroud trying to do. He'd be better at running the channels than Morata. And so I think he would be a good addition if we can get him for a reasonable price. I wouldn't say that we should go out and pay an above premium price for him.
I'm just going to track back there and say for the listeners that don't know, Matt mentioned Sarri. That was Maurizio Sarri. He is the manager of Chelsea.
Yes.
He's known for smoking cigarettes on the sideline.
Well, he can't do that in England, so he does chew on the cigarette butts, though, during the game if you watch him.
I actually think we were watching the game a couple of weeks ago, Phil, and he did light up on the sideline, and it was that miserable tearing apart that they had, the first loss of the season.
It was against the Spurs.
Against the Spurs, the Spurs tore apart. He just couldn't handle it. He's like, oh, that's it, I need a cigarette.
So reports is that Chelsea built him a smoking room, in the back underneath Stamford Bridge near the changing room. So I don't know how true that is, but that's kind of what I've heard.
That's funny. He's certainly a character. I'm taking a bit of a liking to him. He's one of those managers you love to love, not love to hate. You love to love because he's got that character about him. He's just one of those eccentrics of the game,
He's a great guy. Watching press conferences, hearing how he speaks to players and about players, he just seems very open and honest and real, as opposed to someone, his past is so different than most top managers. So you have a guy like Guardiola over at Man City who was playing for Barcelona, playing professionally, and then he coached there, and then we all know he went on to Bayern and now Man City. Sarri was a banker until I think up to the age 35. Really? Started coaching in the 8th division of the Italian league, worked his way up, got to Napoli. And if it wasn't for Juventus's amazing form these last 7-8 years, he probably would have won the league with Napoli a couple times. And so he's done some great work, and I'm excited to have him at Chelsea. I think once we give him enough time to implement his system, especially get a couple transfer windows under his belt, that we should be looking pretty good. So
that's a great segue into a question that I want to ask you, and it's one that we've spoken about at length here and across the pitch. New manager bounce. Is it a thing? Today we saw Ole Gunnar Solskjaer tear apart Cardiff 5-1 with Manchester United. And we also saw old mate whose name I can't pronounce, the Southampton. 3 wins on the trot for Southampton. Is a new manager bounce a thing, or is it just new tactics, new ideas coming into play?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting discussion. I think from a player's perspective, I think it has to be some sort of a bounce. Especially, so if we look at United, now we should preface this. It was Cardiff.
Right. Cardiff, yeah, all right, fair enough. Yeah.
Cardiff is sitting just above the relegation line. They haven't looked that great this year. And so I still kind of think Cardiff is going to be relegated.
I believe that they have, out of all of the teams in the Premier League, I believe that Cardiff has the lowest value on transfer market.
I wouldn't doubt that. But I still think, so any United team should beat a team like Cardiff 5-1.
Sure.
If you just look at the power, the striking power on that team, Anthony Martial, Jesse Lingard, Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah.
Pogba, these guys, if you let them play how they're designed to play, that's the result you're going to get. But there has to be a bounce there because they were playing for a guy like Mourinho, and we all know Mourinho's style is very defensive. And so guys like Pogba are going to be frustrated in that system. Anthony Martial wasn't even making the starting 11 under Mourinho, even though he was in great form those couple times he did start. I think he scored a couple goals. He comes on, he plays well. He looks to integrate everyone else into the game. And so there is some sort of new manager bounce.
Well, I think the thing with the Manchester United, you could just see the facial expressions on the players today. I really feel like I was kind of going back to what I had said last week, where Mourinho had a bunch of Ferraris and he was driving 25 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they weren't. You could see the joy of the game on their face,
especially Pogba.
And this is what happened last year with Chelsea under Antonio Conte. Again, that defensive style football. And so when you have players like Pedro and Willian and Hazard, they want the ball at their feet. They want to be running at defenders. They want to be passing and making plays going forward. And that just isn't the styles. And so it's got to be frustrating from a player perspective.
Curiously, I think that's probably the opposite at Arsenal. Arsene Wenger just let the players play the game. With Unai Emery coming in, he's actually putting a bit of structure into their play. And kind of the reverse happening there, but I think there's probably a new manager bounce there as well. Fight my rant last time. I'm a bit happier today that we beat Burnley of all teams. Jesus Christ, we needed to win that one. Mesut Ozil, you know what? He disappears for huge chunks of the game, but he always just seems to turn up. And there was one time where I think he crossed, I think it was Kolasinac of all players. And seriously, he was nowhere near the ball, but he put the ball where he was going to be. I mean, that's the class of this man. And I think Arsenal's probably been missing this. But, what's your take on Mesut Ozil? Have you been following him, Matt?
I got to be honest, I don't watch a lot of Arsenal games.
Well,
the ones I do catch.
You're gonna have to now, mate.
The ones I do catch, I've been disappointed with Ozil.
Yeah.
I think him moving from Real to Arsenal might not have been the best move. He played so well at Real Madrid. That's when he was in fine form also for the Germany team. The 14 World Cup, that they won.
Do you think that it's a matter of what we had talked about the other day when we were talking about the English league versus the Spanish league? Maybe it was a bad move for Ozil because of the physicality of the English league. I mean, this is a guy that gets knocked over with a strong wind.
For sure. I mean, you come over from Spain, and we've seen this with guys like Morata recently, other people coming from the Spanish league into the Premier League, the physicality goes up. Center backs play a lot more physical than they do in the Spanish league. Premier League refs aren't as willing to make some of those calls. Yeah. In the Spanish league, you see the attacking players be favored when it comes to receiving calls in the attacking end. And you just don't get that in the Premier League. And so I think he did suffer a little bit from that, coming over. And he seems to me like a guy who needs the structure that when he first came, Arsene Wenger wasn't giving him.
Right.
So when he was at Real, he was playing under Jose Mourinho.
That's right.
And Mourinho is very structured. Here's how he wants his team to play. And Ozil seems like he needs that structure to be productive.
Yeah, I definitely think that he seems today where he's reacted to the fact that he hasn't been in the last couple lineups, finally came through with a good game today. So ultimately, I don't know if he's a guy that's worth $300K a week, even in top form at this point in his career. So I certainly wouldn't be sad to see Arsenal move on from him at the transfer window. At the same time, in the games that Arsenal has been in top form and has been scoring multiple goals this year, those have been the games that Ozil has showed up for and performed well in. He's a crucial player for Arsenal, but unfortunately, I just don't think that he shows up enough. And I might even want to look at working at a young guy like Emile Smith-Rowe and see where they can go with him.
Your mate Emile Smith-Rowe. I don't know. I think he's a couple of seasons away from making a regular run at the game. I will say, just the last bit on Mesut Ozil, when him and Torreira were on the pitch, that Arsenal back passing, sideways passing disappeared. They were going forward. And now those two as a sort of central midfield pairing it's mouth-watering. It was enticing all of a sudden, this miserable game, where they're knocking 10 bells out of each other, basically. All of a sudden turn into this fluid Arsenal game that we love.
The other thing is that it frees up Guendouzi to play more defense, because I think that one thing that's really been lacking the past couple of weeks with Ozil completely out of the lineup is that Guendouzi has had to step forward and try to play more offense on a team that's already missing a number of defensive players. Now you're taking one of your defensive midfielders, trying to move them forward, and that's how you end up giving up 3 goals to Southampton.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they do say a good offense is the best defense, but in Arsenal's case, not so sure about that. But you know what? Actually, that's another question for you that I have, Matt. So, I am going to bring up some pain points for you. I do apologise in advance. I don't actually.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
So, okay, being the tactical man that knows a lot about the game, how can you explain that you have superior squads like Man City and Chelsea lose today? Admittedly, it was 1-0 Chelsea and you can get a lucky goal, but 3 goals against Man City, that doesn't happen too often. And yet, both those teams, Chelsea and Man City, had about 75% possession. They made so many chances. They had like almost 20 shots on goal each, but somehow didn't come away with the win. How does that happen against these lesser teams?
That's, I think, the frustrating part being Premier League fans is possession doesn't mean anything if you don't score.
That's what you do with the ball. You're right, yeah.
Right. And so if we look at Guardiola at City, he plays a very certain way and he will always play that way. And it worked well at Barcelona and Bayern because those mid-table teams in the Spanish league and in the Bundesliga, I would say those mid-table teams are comparable to the bottom table teams in the EPL and maybe even some championship sides.
That also goes to the physicality aspect too, because Crystal Palace is a really physical team.
They are. Yep.
The Spanish league and the German league, I don't think that you have physical teams quite like Crystal Palace.
Exactly, right? There's that physicality. Crystal Palace would probably be top of the league in the Spanish league, up there competing.
Maybe 4th after Atletico.
Yeah, I see those mid-table teams and those bottom-table teams in the Bundesliga and the Spanish league just not being able to compete. Now we're seeing it switch because in the Spanish league, they restructured how teams get money from the TV deal. And so now we're seeing those bottom end teams get more money and now they're starting to compete. Right, and so that's where we have Sevilla kind of doing a lot better this year than they might have in the past.
Interesting.
You know what? I think what I see, with Chelsea is we will often play to the level of our competitors. And so this is how we lose to Wolves and then beat City the next week.
Yep. Totally hear that as an Arsenal
the
fan.
same week.
In the same week, right? We lose to Wolves on a Wednesday, and then we go in Saturday and we beat City 2-0. Yeah. And we're just not there's not that killer mentality as we saw today. I don't know if you guys watched the Chelsea game at all.
Did.
I mean, there was just so much passing, and at times I was just yelling to the TV, just someone shoot.
Well, yes, no, you're right, and the passes were incredible. Chelsea had 692 passes to Leicester's 264.
That's Jorginho there.
Which is great, but it doesn't win you the game.
Right.
And so there were times like when David Luiz would be 40 yards out and I'm just yelling, shoot, because at least do something.
Right.
Kasper Schmeichel did have quite a game. He had a point-blank stop on Eden Hazard that really was a game saver.
Yeah, he had some great saves, and goalkeepers tend to elevate their game against Chelsea for some reason.
Oh, come on, mate. Oh, of course you can say that.
But he had a great game. He made some good saves. They were unlucky. We hit the post twice, crossbar once. And so
is it just a case
there was that one that hit the inside of the left post. I almost thought that was going to be one that they had to check the referee's watch on.
Yeah, it was tough, man.
Is it just a case of it's a funny old game, it's football, it's not your day? I mean, Leicester aren't bunnies by it. I mean, they won the league 2 years ago. And, of course, they got Jamie Vardy back in the squad, who was their main striker. I mean, is it just one of those things, Oh, well, move on. We played better. We lost.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And I think the frustrating thing for me, though, was just seeing the reaction of the players.
Right.
At one point, I think it was around the 79th, 80th minute, I looked at my wife and I said, they're out there playing like they're ahead. They're not playing like a team that's down a goal.
There wasn't any urgency. I completely agree. I saw that.
Yes, there was no urgency until about the 88th minute. And then all of a sudden they started realizing like, oh my gosh, we are 1-0 down to Leicester at home. And so that's the scary thing for me. Now, if they go out there...
Do you know what it is? Sorry, I do this. I have the commentator's curse. I said that Stamford Bridge, Chelsea's home, is a fortress. They don't lose there too often. And guess what? You lost. It's my fault. Sorry, Matt.
Your fault, yeah.
Maybe I should do this more often.
Yeah, I think that was the frustrating thing for me was just where was their urgency? They're dominating possession, and yet we're not scoring. There was time, in stoppage time, as Piliqueta, the right back for Chelsea, gets the ball on the wing, and instead of moving it towards the goal, he plays it backwards to Rudiger.
Yeah.
I remember that play. The thing I noticed is they didn't even really seem to get a spark from their subs today. Like when Loftus-Cheek came in, they usually get a spark from that. And he had a couple bad touches where he just fumbled the ball away. He didn't seem to be in his normal form today.
Yeah, he needs to be starting.
Completely
I'd
agree.
agree with that. Yep, absolutely.
He definitely needs to be starting. I would start him over Kovacic.
Oh, absolutely.
And then when they made this substitution, I kind of had this feeling, we're not going to score.
The game felt like it was over in the 85th minute to me, and then
it did. I would have personally rather seen Barkley come in because at least Barkley's going to have a go.
Right, yeah.
Whereas Cesc is going to just look for over-the-top passes, and he played a couple great ones, and then he played a couple really bad ones.
Yeah, that's Cesc Fabregas all over.
Yeah, and I really like Cesc, but I think it's maybe time for him to move on in January.
Funny enough, I did actually hear a rumor that he might be looking to go back to Arsenal, which would be remarkable. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but
no, I know Milan have made him an offer.
Oh, have they? Okay.
And he's just kind of weighing the options. I don't think he really necessarily wants to leave London. He's settled there. He spent a lot of time there. His family is probably pretty settled there. And then Chelsea are looking to extend his contract by a year from what I've heard. So we'll see what happens.
Now, one thing that all this discussion here about Chelsea and also Man City, beyond just the surprising results today, brings us to a discussion about our player of the episode today. The big topic that we've actually talked about a few times, and I know that, Matt, you have some big opinions on this one probably. Our player of the week for this episode, almost a co-players of the week, as in the Belgians that make these two teams tick. That would, of course, be Kevin De Bruyne for Man City, who is our player of the week. Even on the losing side today, he did have an especially wizard-rific goal, in the words of Aaron Ayres. Possibly more impressive even than the one that he had in the League Cup game the other day. This one was a good, I want to say, 30 yards out from the right box, and he absolutely just buried it at the top left corner of the net. It has been posted on both our Facebook and our Twitter if you have a chance to check it out. Also, he did make a pass. I want to say there was 5 minutes of stoppage time added on in this game, and I want to say about 4 minutes into stoppage time, he did make a pass into the box that really should have ended the game. I believe it was Sané that he passed it into. I'll have to check myself on that one, but it wasn't finished. But he had Manchester City's second goal. He actually subbed on in the game. He didn't even play the whole game, and easily could have had the pass that tied it. But the discussion that I wanted to have, and we've talked with Matt a little bit about this on Facebook, is the debate between the two Belgians. Of course, Matt, being a Chelsea fan, is also going to be a big fan of Eden Hazard. He had also mentioned, I believe at one point to me, that he felt that De Bruyne might be the most consistent player in the league. So from a Chelsea fan's perspective, Matt, what is your feelings on the Hazard versus Bruyne debate? Who's the better Belgian?
Who is the better Belgian?
I think that probably comes down to who makes the better waffles, eh?
I think it's tough, man. So if you look at, I think you have to look at how they play internationally. So they play in different positions for Belgium, right? Hazard plays up in the front three. So this past World Cup, Belgium would typically line up in a 3-4-3. So, they go 3 at the back, 4 in the midfield, and then 3 up top. Hazard playing that left forward position, and De Bruyne would play in the center of the park. And so they're playing different positions for Belgium. I think consistency-wise, you got to say De Bruyne has been very much more consistent. And I don't think that's because he's necessarily the better player. I think that's because of what's around him.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
The system he plays in and the players that City have So teams can focus on Hazard and kick Hazard out of the game. They can man mark Hazard out of the game. And then they're going to force someone else on Chelsea's lineup to step up. They're going to force Pedro to step up and be the focal point of the strategy, or force Willian or whoever it is, whoever's playing up front. And a lot of times that does not work out well because those players just aren't at that level anymore. As much as I love Willian, as much as I love Pedro, they're kind of past their prime.
Solid guys, but yeah, they're
solid guys.
They're not on the level of Hazard. And then you make a great point, because with Belgium, Hazard really can't get shut down that same way, because if you try and focus on Hazard, then you have De Bruyne, you have Dries Mertens, you have Lukaku, who is really just kind of a hammer for them. It's funny, Lukaku is really the perfect player for Belgium, because you have all these great setup players with Mertens and Hazard and De Bruyne, and Lukaku could just stand in front of the goal and be a hammer.
Yep.
I think it's quite incredible, and you raise a very good point, Matt, and I think you're 100% correct. Man City today pulled off Otamendi and Delph in defence and Raheem Sterling in attack, and put on Sergio Aguero, Kevin De Bruyne, and Riyad Mahrez, which is remarkable. I mean, Man City obviously were like, oh, God, we need to win this bloody thing. But, that's the depth of that squad. They can pull off 2 defenders and a world-class striker and put on 3 world-class strikers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, you got to look at one point in that City game, they had Ilkay Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Gabriel Jesus, Leroy Sané, Riyad Mahrez, Sergio Aguero, and Kevin De Bruyne on the field.
That's just insane.
I mean, all those players could be starting for top clubs around the world. And when you got a bench where you can look down, Pep Guardiola can look at his bench and call on a guy like Riyad Mahrez or Kevin De Bruyne or Sergio Aguero to come in. It just provides so much depth there that, like I said, De Bruyne is so consistent and plays so well game after game because he's playing in a system with depth where Hazard is not. And that's where, as a Chelsea supporter, there's a big discussion if he's going to resign or is he actually going to go to Real Madrid. The only way he stays is if we sit down and say, we're going to go out this January and we're going to sign 1 or 2 other world-class players to come in and help.
That's kind of, I think, what they're trying to do with Pulisic, and I just don't think Pulisic is quite at that level yet. Callum Wilson, maybe.
Yeah. I would rather give Callum Wilson a shot because he's at least played, over there before than Pulisic, and they're only a year apart. Callum Wilson's 19, Pulisic, I believe, is still 20, or maybe he might have just turned 21.
Wilson's 25, 26. He's a little bit older.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was talking about Hudson-Odoi.
Oh, yeah. He's got plenty of years ahead of him. He's certainly one to watch out for.
We talked about on the last episode a bit. Our kind of dream player to bring into Arsenal was Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who we've actually read that Man City took a look at it and Crystal Palace said no way. So we're probably going to have to keep dreaming on that. But who would be your dream signing for Chelsea in the transfer window?
I would have to say it'd be Icardi from Inter Milan. I think he would thrive. He's an outstanding striker. I think he would thrive under Sarri. I think him linking up with Hazard, that they would form an amazing 1-2 punch up top there. And then if you could go out and get another winger to add to that, I think that would just greatly enhance our chances of competing for a top 4 spot. And then we could possibly go on and win the Europa and win some other stuff, but
no, you're not going to win the Europa. I'm sorry, you're not.
I just don't think that that's a realistic possibility. Inter Milan's trying to lock him down with a new contract, and so right now I believe he still has a 100 million euro release clause.
Really? Wow.
In his contract, but that would be my dream signing, Mauro Icardi from Inter. And so I follow a guy on Twitter whose name is Joe Tweedy, and he's a Chelsea journalist. And, he made the tweet to give Alvaro Morata and 100 million euros to Inter for Icardi.
Wow.
And so I would support that.
I'm going to post this to our Facebook page, but there's a YouTube video of him and his 100 Inter Milan goals. So he's certainly the consummate striker at 25 years of age. He certainly sounds like a good buy.
He would be my dream signing in January?
I would just like some defenders.
We could even get, maybe have Stan Kroenke sit over like Aaron Donald or something. I mean, we just need anybody on defense at this point.
I read one report that said Cahill was being pursued by Arsenal. So
not my friend Timmy Cahill. You're talking about Gary Cahill, yes.
Gary Cahill.
Chelsea defender. I have one more question for you. How does it make you feel as an American, and you're part of this secret club over here, almost secret club, if you will, and you walk past someone in a Chelsea shirt? How does that make you feel? What do you say to that person?
I always talk, if they're wearing a Chelsea shirt, comment on it, maybe talk about if they have a player on the back. And then I always ask them if they've heard of the Phoenix Blues, which is the local supporters club here. And then, if they haven't, I invite them down to the pub to watch a game with us, to experience, being around a group of like-minded people that are all there cheering on the same team. Because I think that's what's so special about following a football club, is it kind of just makes you family.
We talk about the comparison to college sports a lot here on this show, and I think that the camaraderie of college sports fans in the U.S. is probably closer to that of association football or soccer fans. And speaking of camaraderie, we do have one big camaraderie between the three of us, which is, of course, our hometown Phoenix Rising. And Matt, I know that you are a season ticket holder, and we mentioned on our last episode that unfortunately Chris Cortez will not be back next year, which is a lot of scoring to replace. Since then, we have actually signed Joey Calistri. What you thought about the signing, and what you thought that the Rising would be looking towards to fill the Cortez and Drogba shoes next year?
Yeah. First off, I was gutted when Chris Cortez came on, posted on Twitter that he wasn't going to return.
Yeah, I think that was the one guy we kept waiting to hear that they re-signed, and then it just kept not coming and not coming. And
yes, I mean, he was a goal machine for us. Even coming off the bench, there were a couple games last year where, we needed one or two goals. And when you would see him on the touchline and getting ready to come in, there was this thought that ran through my head saying, okay, we can do this. He can get these goals.
Yeah.
And, he would.
There was that expectation, and he would deliver as well.
He would come up big. And so I was absolutely gutted when he said he wasn't going to resign. Now, personally, I think he's got something in the works.
Yep.
I don't think we're going to see him at another USL club next year. I either think come this January, he's going to sign with an MLS squad, or maybe someone somewhere else.
Do you foresee him maybe trying to pop up in Atlanta? Because they're certainly going to be losing some people.
Yeah, I think he's making a push. If not for Atlanta, maybe FC Cincinnati.
Cincinnati was the one I was going to say. Yep.
Who would need a goal scorer. I mean, they do have Fernando Adi, but I don't think he's as reliable as Chris Cortez. I'm excited to see where he goes. I'm gutted that it's not going to be with the Rising.
I do think we've picked St. Louis's pocket there by signing. Oh God, the name
Joey.
Just went out of my head. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
No, I think it's a great pickup. I didn't watch a lot of St. Louis FC games last year. Watching some of his highlights on YouTube, which you always have to remember, those videos, they're always going to show you the best stuff.
Oh, of course, yes.
They're never going to show you the good. But he's 5 years younger. So Chris Cortez is 30. Mm-hmm. Joey's 25. So he's younger. It seems like he has a little bit more stamina, more speed. And so I think coming in, looking at him playing with Jason Johnson and Solomon Asante, and just kind of the midfield we're creating right now, I think he'll play really well for us. And so I'm excited to see what he brings. And I know that they're going to get the best out of him. And so I think it's going to be a great year, man. I see us winning the Western Conference again. And pushing for a USL Cup.
I'd say he's an exciting player. He's a guy where I think if he was 3 inches taller, he'd be in the Premier League.
I just have one thing to say. Matt, great to have you on board. We're looking forward to your insight and your technical analysis of the game. And I think you'll be a great addition to the team. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, man. I'm stoked. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and just finding the people to do it with. And so I was glad when I stumbled upon your guys' new podcast, and thought I was going out on a limb just to reach out and see if I could help in any way. And so I'm thankful that, you guys were kind of feeling the same thing. And I'm excited to see where this goes, especially with the rest of this Premier League. And then obviously we get Phoenix Rising back here in March. So
Yep. Absolutely. It's going to be a very exciting title race. I think it's the last 7 out of 8 Christmas first place, if that makes sense. The first place at Christmas, 7 out of the last 8 have gone on to win the title. We're in for an excellent title race this year. Liverpool is top of the tree, if you will, at Christmas. With Man City coming in second, I think we're in for a cracking season, and I look forward to discussing it with both of you over the coming few months.
Absolutely, and thank you again for coming on the show, Matt, and bringing your knowledge of the game. And you're going to absolutely make a great addition to the team, and can't wait to read more of your articles. If you haven't been to Across the Pitch/blog, make sure you go there and check out Matt's full article on the January transfer window. You can also read Aaron's most recent articles on manager sackings, tables, and promotion relegation. And as always, we thank you for joining us on Across the Pitch. Thank you again, Matt, for coming on the show today, and we will talk with you again soon. As always, to my brother from down under, Aaron Ayres, thank you, and Merry Christmas and a happy holidays to all.